Monday Morning Matters. Perspectives from Southeast Asia. Hi, this is Arlene and you're listening to Durian ASEAN. We have a guest. She's Malay and she's going to talk about Malay, but not any Malay. It's our topic of today, which is the case of Malay privilege. Talking about the issue related to Malay society, Dina Zaman, which is our guest of today, she is a well-known writer. Of course, she also is an independent researcher. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello. So, why we are talking about Malay today? Why Malay fascinates you?
I think, I've been writing since, the early 2000s, yeah? And I found that my work kept revolving around what it meant to be Malay. Probably because I'm curious to know what it means to be Malay. Do I see myself as a Malay? I can be quite detached from a lot of things. So I just tick Malay on forms because it's the only thing I know. Yeah, but I see myself as a Malaysian. But I think that the reason why I'm fascinated by the discourse about what it means to be Malay is because of the politics and what you see in the country right now. Obviously, we are a community. I would even want to say that we're an ethnic race because we aren't. We are a community that is that is a political construct that is still trying to find our own identity.
So the identity is not a complete form yet?
I don't think so. I think we're still searching.
It's not like the Korean identity or the American identity?
No, not at all. Without wanting to sound as if I am, putting down my people. I mean, who am I, right? I'm not Queen Elizabeth. But we are not on the same scale as Indonesia. And it does frighten me as a Malaysian. And it fascinates me as someone who writes and observes and does research. So what is a Malay? I got all your questions and I thought, holy cow, how am I going to answer this?
It's a very tough question to answer because it's not like a national identity like what is Indonesian, where you can spell out the Pancasila and say, oh, if you believe in that and you're born in Indonesia, most probably you're Indonesian. But to be a Malay, it's not exactly an ethnic identity, but it's not exactly a national identity nor a religious identity either.
Yes. I think one of the things is, as I mentioned earlier in my discussion, I met Wiki Bing and he spoke at the Loya Buruk Forum. One of the things he said that is, whenever we discuss anything political in Malaysia or anywhere else, we must go back to the past. And I believe this is what Meredith Weiss, the professor who came, she spoke at one forum organized by Nottingham, Malaysia. We have to go back to the context and the history of all the problems. So if you want to talk about what it means to be Malay, so if you go back to the Zaman Tok Moyang dulu-dulu kan, you look at how religion, trade, politics came into Peninsular Malaysia. Let's not even talk about Sabah Sarawak. Not that because they're not important, but we'll look at this section first. So Islam came through not just through the sea, it also came through trade, it came through the rivers. And you have to see what kinds of people brought the faith, yeah? Then, of course, we were all colonized. And I would say that the British, the colonials, when they came in, the resident generals, when they all went off to administer each state, they all had their own ideas about how to run a state and what each ethnic group should be. So when the Chinese came to mind, the Indians came to do rubber tapping, and then we had the Malaysians, right? I suppose it's what you call OCD organization, All right, they are like this, we put them this way. They are like this, they are like this. And the Malays, which actually at that time, we didn't even have the word Melayu then. We were orang Bugis, orang Aceh.
Prior to the colonization of the West or the Europeans, the Malays are actually, the Malays that we refer to today as Malays. In the past, it would be they will probably refer themselves from the geography that they came from.
Yes.
Either they came from Bugis or
Betul.
they came from
Agree.
Kelantan and whatever state that they came from.
So they come, with each, culture, right? I mean, the Bugis, from what I hear, because my dad says we have Bugis blood. We're supposed to be all pirates. We're very fiery. Then,
I'm scared now.
You have each ethnic race, right? This goes across the board. We all have our own cultural quirks, okay?
In Indonesia, the fascinating thing about Indonesia, I just want to mention a bit, because the Malay referred in Indonesian context would be ethnic group, which means they came from a certain area within Sumatra. And
Agree.
And they have that Malay characteristic. But in Peninsula, it's like everyone jumbled into it.
Everyone is jumbled. And, much as the British have brought in a lot of things to the country, they've also kind of screwed us up. Okay, that's not politically correct, but anyway. But it has, in the long run. Because this is why, when you talk about Malay unity, this Perkasa or Isma, right? How are we going to be really united when the Kelantanese Malays don't even want to hang out? We all cakap German, things like that. We're very divided. Now, along the way, and I always like to tell people this, I think one reason why we're also trying to find ourselves is because the Islam that came to the Malays, if before it was very sophisticated, Sultan practice, we practiced it in a very syncretic form. Then suddenly, when kaum muda came to so-called rescue us Malays who don't know anything, we then realized, what? Being Malay has not helped us. Orang kampung have not, they're not empowered. The ones who are so-called empowered would be the monarchy and the privileged Malays, who were then being groomed by the British to become the so-called elite class, the government, the civil servants. That worked for a while, but now I wouldn't say it's not working. But we're growing, and we are still a young country. But we're still searching for ourselves. And that is why you see the form of the Islam that you have now. In some ways, it's very frightening, Arlene. But in some ways, I tell myself, you know what? It's good that we're doing this because we're spreading our wings.
Mm-hmm. Malay, not just in terms of race, but in terms of behavior. So, politically, of course, we have our constitution defining what Malay is all about. Yeah. It's based on religion, skin color somehow, and also in terms of cultural identity. But in terms of your understanding of being Malay, what is it all about? What differentiates you between you and the rest of the ethnic groups in Malaysia?
I suppose, simplistically speaking, even though this can be contested, I'm Malay in Malaysia. I'm Muslim, right? I speak Terengganu Malay lah. Sometimes I wear baju kurung, but maybe that worked before. As I said, I see myself more as Malaysian. Malay ni, I don't know whether I told you about my childhood. My dad was in the Wisma Putra. So I was being carted along to all kinds of schools, I never really saw, when you are a third culture kid, you're always by the sidelines thinking, everyone's a bit strange here. My parents put me in Tunku Krosha College because my father was traveling so much. For 1-2 years, I didn't go to school. And that was when I was confronted with the idea of being Malay. I was in Common Bukit Nanas for a short while, prior to TKC. And I remember my senior said, you should be proud you're in TKC. Why is that? Because you're in a Malay school. This is the most privileged premier Malay girls' school. Then I'm thinking, I was only 14, 15? What on earth are you all talking about? And I always saw the goodness of people rather than being Malay. Now it's because, if I'm a bit gatal on the form, I put Malaysian lah. Or, if I'm lazy, I put Malay. I'm not comfortable with being asked this. I do see that, Malays have problems. I do see that, we Malays are not a lost cause. Yeah, there are very good Malays out there. As, good Chinese, good Indians, good everyone.
But I guess the problem is to try to group different people into one particular idea of a race, perhaps.
You can't. I mean, that you asked me about Article 153. So I read the Constitution yesterday. I went to Art Harun, the blogger. I like his work because he makes law so simple. And what he says was true. If you really look at the Constitution, Article 153, it is up to the Yang Pertuan Agong. He may protect the special position, not rights, position of the Malays and other communities or natives of Malaysia and Borneo. Yeah? So it is up to him. It didn't necessarily mean that the rights as in, I deserve a scholarship. But at that time, maybe it worked. Look, I'm not a lawyer, so maybe this is not me. But I did think when I was reading it semalam, can the Constitution be amended? Or maybe revised to reflect what is happening now? Now, I understand dulu when this was drafted out during when we were creating an independent Malaysia. We were at the bottom rung economically, yeah? At the end of the day, at that time, the Chinese who came, the Indians who came, not that they were any less Malaysians, but probably, if things didn't work out, they could have, but they chose to stay on. But we were still at the bottom rung of the ladder. So this is why the NEP was created. This is why this thing came. So maybe at that time it worked. Now things are different. I was just thinking, I was just going on and thinking like, can the Constitution be amended? According to Ad Harun, it can. So I looked and said, maybe now we have to look at the Constitution. I understand that, this would probably be akin to revising the Holy Quran. And that's a no-no. So let's not go there because we're going to talk about Malay, what it means to be Malay. I think we need to relook at a lot of things about what it means to be Malay. And if you don't mind me extending this, the NEP, my father's a civil servant. So he said that when all this came out, the NEP, it came out from a place of distress. May 13, 1969. And he said at that time, Dina, my dad said in Kelantan at that time, if you were clever enough, they didn't do streaming, but if you were clever enough, okay, this young Kelantanese boys, okay, they may not be from privilege punya backgrounds, but adalah pandai sikit. So, okay, we'll train them.
They can move up a bit.
We will train them to become civil servants. So my dad and his whole bunch of Kelantanese friends from the kampung went off to UM. And, my dad did Mandarin and history and political science. And he said, okay, this is very interesting. I do. And for them, they were like the first few batches of Melayu who were given this. And they said, my God, we can actually be part of this movement to create the Malaysia. Then May 13th happened. And my mom has a lot of horror stories about how she had to hide all of us. My dad said it came out of a time because, you know what? You can't say that the Malays are lazy. We were just like that, very agrarian. We were not able to cope well, with the independence.
So there's a certain kind of socio-economic limitation at
that time. And also, we were independent in 1957. In between that to 1969, everyone was happy, yes, but we were not moving. And whether you want it, the Chinese, the Indians were a lot more, they leapfrogged a lot. Yeah? So that was that thing. So the NEP worked. But like a lot of good things in life, it goes haywire lah. And then you realize, now, when you think about it, I tell you this, when I did my first degree, my dad said to me, you know what? I will pay. We'll find a way to sort this out, yeah? Because this scholarship could be given to budak-budak who need it. So I was there again, plonk, in Kalamazoo. Can you just imagine? It was a real Kampung Melayu. And I'm like, holy cow, there's like Tungku Krusha all over again. Why am I here? And it was fascinating because you have budak-budak Mara, budak-budak GPE. Some are still my good friends till now. And these kids, my friends at least we'd be working, I worked and all that. But you had these kids who had these scholarships and they weren't working, they were living off. And they were not doing well. And I still remember, say, I don't know why you've got the scholarship. I should be getting a scholarship because I'm smarter than you. That doesn't make me popular lah. But I felt very resentful. You're not working like us so-called farmer kids. I was doing macam-macam, receptionist, all this. You're on government scholarship and you're buying in what? Pyrex, Tupperware. What? And you're just getting minimum C. And I felt very, this is not the way to go. You've got a scholarship. You better be up to mark. So the NEP along the way, I know the government wanted to empower a lot of Malays because there were so many of us who were just
Perhaps
foreign.
some got too empowered.
Some too empowered. But you look at it, that was me in the 90s, late 80s. Now you see a total disenfranchised Malay group.
We will talk about it. We'll take a short break and we will talk further on the privileged Malay, how they fare right now. Monday Morning Matters. Perspectives from Southeast Asia. Hi, this is Arlene. We are back again with Dina Zaman, a writer and independent researcher. And right now he's going to continuing talking about the Malay community, the case of Malay privilege. So, continuing from our previous discussion about some Malays have become more privileged than the other Malays because of certain economic benefits that they got, and especially the NEP, the new economic policy. So, what happened between post 1980s, I suppose, when things got a bit haywired?
I think you are seeing what you're seeing now because of the division of the economic strata among the Malays. Okay, we go back to history. When the Brits came, they created an elite class: the civil servants, the politicians, the monarchy. So they've gone on to move. The kids are living off. Some are doing very well, working for GLCs. Yeah. Then you have the so-called, anak-anak cikgu, or maybe the lower rung of civil servants, but they've done well. They believed in education. Okay, you will have to study hard, get a JPA Omara scholarship. And now you see the doctors, the lawyers, the judges,
the
professionals, yeah? And then you see the ones who are maybe not so lucky, but they went off to UiTM. And when I say that UiTM, I'm not saying that they're bad. I've met a lot of graduates from there, and they're like, wow, you guys are really hardworking and smart. Then you have the others. I've always said that, and I notice that when I do my work about Muslims kat Malaysia, I feel that later on, and I see now, it's actually happening now, but it's very quiet. The class divide is coming out among the orang Melayus.
So it's intra ethnic divide.
Yeah. You see, when you have about the wealthy, it doesn't matter whether they're the politicians, proxies who've done good or what. But when you have money, you can live in your little silos, your little worlds. Nobody can bother you. And when you have money, people really won't bother you. People aspire to be you. But for those who don't have or who are struggling to even get a home now, the resentment is there. I have so many Malay friends, younger ones, who studied very hard overseas or locally. And they're having to move back to the parents' place. And it's not huge, They've had to cut this because I said, you know what? Let's talk about education system. The government schools that we have now are not like the government schools that we had when we were in students. With no choice but to send them to the lowest rung of private schools. No choice. If not, my kids won't be able to understand Malay or English. And the ones who are enjoying the benefits of really good education are those who have money. Why should I, this struggling Malay professional, have to struggle so hard because of your access? And when I say access, there are two access. Access to, you're a hedonist, you can do whatever, to access to the opportunities. And there will be, I don't agree with Prakasa or Isma. I think they're like, oh my God, why? But I can see where they're coming from because they represent a class of Malays who are very resentful of what's happening now.
So Isma and Pakasa, especially Isma, I think, because they get a lot of the younger generation to join in.
Yeah.
They seem to be very popular among the Malays. And I think, partly I think it's because they feel that the government is not doing enough to protect their interests, and partly also of the wealth disparity between the very rich and the ordinary Malaysian, especially the ordinary Malays.
I agree with that. You know, have you read the book called The Chinese Dilemma?
Oh yeah, there is. I thought it's the only Malay dilemma.
I'm not the writer. I'm not allowed to mention it, but he gave me his book. And that book was actually, even though it talked about how the Chinese are fared in Malaysia, it also talked about how Malaysians, Melayus, right? They've never really gone far. And, you know, sometimes I get a bit irritated by people I meet. Oh, you know, they're the Melayu kampung, not the Malays like us. And I'm going, God, that's really arrogant to say that. You know, this G25, I just mentioned, you know, I respect them. I've read about their work. They've done a lot of things I probably will never do. Yeah? I don't think I even have the energy. I think they've done great work. But from the point of the Malay who is struggling or who's just having a humdrum life, kan? There is a lot of resentment. And it's easy for you to say, you're a Tan Sri, you have access to this, that, and that. What about me? My father is sick. I'm struggling.
So are you saying that there's a kind of divide?
Oh, there is a divide.
In terms of how people actually, how Malays in essence view the G25.
Yeah.
And what kind of view that they see in terms of
I think
G25?
they see this. I was talking to some people on Facebook before I came here. I said, do you think, because they all speak, you know, they speak very good English. They're all like, you know, upper corporate trainers and all. And I said, look, there's G25 or IM26 or IM28. Do they represent you? No. I said, why don't they represent you? I said, they look like they have the same kind of qualifications as you. He said, Dina, Islam, religiously, they don't represent me. Intellectually, no. Because they were civil servants. So there is, you know, you move up. Tak adalah nak macam bunuh diri lah, right? For them, for us, we really have to struggle. I've got kids. Okay, maybe not have to struggle, but I had to crack my head. How to find work. And he said, we can't compete with the GLCs. We have the brains, we can do the work. But we can't compete because we're like this. No one's giving us the opportunities. So they do what they do. And, you know, they have a different idea of Islam, but we'll leave that for another discussion. But you can feel, and I tell you now, with the economy, I wouldn't say tanking, I mean, being like this, it's going to get harder. And people are going to say, now when you talk about Ismail saying, you know, the government is not protecting our rights, our position as Malays. Sometimes when this happens, right, okay, all governments anywhere must protect their citizens. Whether they're black, white, purple, polka dotted. But at the same time, I think to myself, okay, one, we cannot be dependent on the government. Bankrupt lah the government. Mati, you know. But that there is a gap here. What is happening that the government, you know, that is not reaching out to the needy? What is happening? There is a big gap here that I'm trying to scratch my head. Okay, we have all these grants. You hear horror stories of people taking the grants and running off the party. But that's a small, limited number lah. But there's a big vacuum here. Now, why isn't this touching? Now, I think that around the Malays, since we're talking about them, and with the influx of, you know, foreign workers coming in, refugees and all that, we're actually going to drop into a hole. Now, is the professional class going to say, hey, we're going to help our own people? Or are they going to say, you know what, we've moved on. Kita bukan Melayu macam they are. Dia tu Melayu totok. We are professionals. We are the elite or aspiring to be elite.
I just give example of how other communities would react in terms, because to talk about disparity between ethnic groups, it's not just a uniquely Malay thing. Even within Chinese and Indian communities, I just give example of Chinese community because I'm quite familiar with it. Usually, the Chinese rich would be philanthropic with their money, and they would actually contribute back to society, not by individual donation, but more like contribute towards certain key welfare, especially on education. I mean, that's the reason why Chinese education has been part of the political contest within the Chinese community, because that's where the welfare comes in by the rich Chinese.
I totally agree with you. Like my sister, she was telling me, she talked about exactly what you said. And two, let's talk about churches, kan? And she said, the Christians in Malaysia, they use the churches not just for, for a place for worship. She's got friends, say, the priests, the nuns will take care of the kids. They even have a tuition center there. Kata kalau nak buat kat masjid kat Malaysia, ya Allah, ya Rabbi. And I remember one time my mom said, this was one masjid in a very upper middle class neighborhood. You try lah to do something, And he said, no, this place is a place for worship. I said, no, a mosque is for the ummah.
It's supposed to be a community center.
Community center. But I don't know why we are just so rigid. Sometimes I think, you know what? When I'm really angry, I say, you ni malas. Sebab tu you tak nak buat benda gini, Benda tu senang saja. Open up your doors. You are empowering a community. And this community should not be, if you're a true Muslim or Malay or Chinese, you should be opening up your doors for everyone. This is what it means to live in a country.
But it could be also because they are playing different roles. It looks like places like churches, why they have transformed itself to be more community-centric, because it has left away its political agenda. During the Dark Ages, it was very close to the authorities back then, which is the monarchy. But nowadays, it seems like the mosque is playing an extended role of the government rather than
who's running all the mosques,
rather than playing a community role towards society.
You have, all these religious authorities, Jakim and all that, who are, who administer and monitor the mosque. So they have their own agendas. They say you can't do this, you can't do that, which actually really doesn't benefit us. You have beautiful mosques, and you think it's so beautiful. There's so much you can do. Look, I go to Masjid Wilayah quite a bit. My parents and all, and I think this is so pretty. Okay, all right lah. They've opened up for weddings, kan? But I think takkanlah it's only open for weddings. Buka to other things. Okay, why can't you do simple things? Let the kids play around. But a lot of people say the mosque is not a place for play, which is actually very different from my Boston friends' experiences. For them, the kids in Bosnia, mosques are really like a place for people to go. I don't know. Sometimes I get frustrated with what's happening in the country.
You don't have to go far, even back in our Indonesian neighbor. There are certain places in Indonesia's mosque where it becomes a real community center where even the non-Muslim actually come in to just, be part of the community.
When you talk about that, agree. And in Indonesia, I have been to mosques where you do not have to wear the hijab. You can wear a miniskirt. You masuk, you semayang. Janji, you pray. And then you go out. I don't know why in Malaysia we're very unwelcoming, though. That I think that's why a lot of young kids are rebelling and moving on from the mosque, because it's not a place where it's very loving. It's very authoritarian. Ini tak boleh buat, tu tak boleh buat. I don't know whether things are going to change. I think we have to change how we perceive Islam, how we practice. Actually, it's never about the religions, but the people. And I sure don't know where they get these ideas from.
Anyway, we'll take another short break, and when we return, we will talk more about the Malay privilege in this country. Monday Morning Matters. Perspectives from Southeast Asia. This is Arlene. We are back again with Dina, Zaman to talk about the case of Malay privilege. So I want to highlight about some economic concern that was raised in the Malaysian Human Development Report 2013. I think the concern is somehow related to the kind of discussion we want to have today, which is the Malay privilege. One of the concern is from their research, they see that intra-ethnic inequality is definitely widening really huge, and also it seems like the middle class in this country are being squeezed. The rich are becoming richer, and this is just among the Malays. My question is, why the government is not looking beyond this, beyond trying to ensure that the problem is of intra-ethnic disparity is not widening more and more?
There's a lot of things I want to say to that.
Even with NEP, I mean, there are still many more poor Malays, and it goes unaddressed, it seems like.
A lot of people would blame corruption for that. Okay, that's one aspect. But I also know, because I have done a few jobs, freelance work for governments, I have met a lot of government officials, personnel, right, who have really good ideas to empower Malaysians, whether they're Malay Chinese. You're talking about perumahan, economy. But at the end of the day, and I've seen those reports, I've worked on one, they have fantastic ideas, they are good ideas, but it goes up to a certain level. Now, once you reach the top, the ministry, and I'm not talking about the ministry, I'm talking about ministers, it's whether they take your reports seriously enough. I have a little bit of a soft spot for government servants because my parents were civil servants. So I know that my dad worked so hard. My mom was like, jadi cikgu pun like, oh, I got so much
work. In fact, teachers accounted to half of the civil service.
Right. And my sister is a civil servant because she said she was a stockbroker. Gave it out, said, I'm going to follow mommy and bah. I'm going to, But as everyone said, it stops at a certain level. You can scream, shout, write all these policies, give all this. Now, other ministers are going to do anything about it. That's another thing. And it's frustrating. I think it must be even more frustrating for them. Because they see the disparity. My sister's in education. She sees a lot. She goes a lot to Sabah, Sarawak. And she's like, I'm frustrated because I can only do here. And I said, why don't you join politics? Tak payah, dia kata. But the only way you can change is through politics in this country. But our politicians going to do anything about this? There's a lot of talk, but very little action. There's a lot of show, but nothing is done. And I think that when you talk about this economic divide, inequality, kan, in my wildest moments at night, when I have insomnia, kan, I really wonder whether this is social engineering. Why? Because when you have them poor, and you go, yes, the government will take care of you. When you are poor and desperate, right? You go to the Bomo, because you need fast results. I need money for this. You go to the Along, most of these triads, right? The biggest customers are the Melayus, 2. 3, you depend on the government. Tak apa. If we vote for them, something will happen. So they come. Like Brim. Now, a lot of people are saying, this Brim is nonsense. Tapi kat Terengganu, when I was there, when they handed out, 500 ringgit, it goes far, tau. It's to spend,
The money can really stretch.
It stretches, okay lah, maybe 1 month. If you have 10 kids, susah lah. But at least it pays debts. It pays like ubat kat hospital tu. They don't think long term. When you are talking about the poor, they don't think long term. It's like, I need this money now. So, I think, could this be why they're making all these Malays poor? Because they need the votes. They need the support. I don't know. This is me and my insomnia talking. But I actually think that. Because why do you want to keep one community downtrodden like this for such a long time? By rights, at 57, we should be somewhere. I mean, there will always be a poor community. Not that I want that, but it shouldn't be where we are now. And, talking about poor, I've always wondered, why is it despite religion, young Malay kids are always in trouble with macam-macam hal? Unwanted babies, etc. Then I have friends, who do a lot of social work. And then you get horror stories, what's happening within, government agencies and all. You think, this is why things don't work. Maybe people, they themselves aren't bothered about empowering ourselves.
Are you saying also that the Malays are in denial with their situation
I
in
think
their own, reality?
I think not in denial. But, this book, I have to, you have to find this book. This man, he used to be the Secretary General of Sarawak.
So the book is by Abang Yusuf Puteh. It's
Yes.
called The Malay
Yeah.
The Malay Mind.
One of the things he said is, what is actually causing the downfall of the Malay mind is that kita ni terlalu percayakan kepada qadar dan qadar.
Fatalism?
Fatalism kita tak apalah. Gini, if we are poor, ini sebabkan Allah yang ni, our fate. Actually, there's nothing in Islam that says that, you have to work hard. What I understand from the text, yeah? If you're a real Muslim, you're going to work hard sampai mati. You don't make yourself a burden to society, There is one story that my mom loves to tell us. In between, semayang 100 rakaat and feeding your family, which is more important, which will put you in heaven, is the one that's feeding the family. But we have a fatalist punya idea, and I don't know whether it's ingrained in our DNA. So when this happens, you're like, okay lah, kerajaan macam gini, okay, finish. Oh well, this is my lot in life. We can't have that anymore. We have to change our mindset.
So in a way that the Malays have to change their mindset, but how? I mean, it cannot be just overnight.
You have to, you know what? I tell you, this is just me being this old makcik lah. But we had a really good education system when I was in school. Where it empowered everyone, where it everyone felt that they had hope. Now I look at my niece and nephew. I mean, I love them to bits, but I'm frightened when you talk about writing English or Malay. I think you guys are like in Form 1. This is not, when I was in Standard 3, I could write, a story, basic story about my pen, my pencil case. What is this? Our education system has to change. I don't know about going back to before, but it has to be, I don't know, I'm not inspired lah by what I see.
So are you saying also that when it comes to changing the Malays, it's not so much about changing the behavior, but changing our basic structural policy, like education is the key one.
Education, yeah. Number two, I think we need to approach what it means to be Malay from a different aspect.
Probably a humanist aspect, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, like now, okay, everyone talks about being Malay, I'm like, okay, yeah. I have to refer to this because for my research lah. But can we look from a different angle? Can we find another way of empowering the Malays to make, there has to be a different dynamic here. Right now, it's like everyone's saying, the Malays are like this, Okay, fine, we are a political construct. Then, the colonials made us like that. But we can change.
So we can actually have a post-Malay, meaning
you
that...
You can have a post-Malay.
Forget the constitution. It's there. It will never change.
Yeah.
But I guess to move beyond what the constitution have.
Right. We can, with all due respect to the federal constitution, look, it's 2015. When was this drafted out? 1957, 60s, yeah? I think it's time that we create a new Melayu Baru. And when I say about Melayu Baru, I'm not talking about the one who drives around with a Porsche or a BMW, kan? Ayo, that one menyemakkan jalan raya only, I would like to see a very empowered community where they see themselves as having the confidence, the same confidence that their other, non-Malay friends have, saying that, hey, I can do this on my own. I may not speak great English, but I can, offer the country this. Right now, no. And I think that's probably why you see a lot of people moving to, extremist punya ni lah. Because they feel, it didn't work for me being Malay, so I might as well join a terrorist organization. I mean, I think.
The funny thing is, my dad used to tell me, the Malays today are not really Malays because the Malays in the past, what defined them Malay, in terms of their value system, is compassionate. The Malay were seen as a more compassionate community compared to other communities. In fact, they say that, and then my dad say that today's Malay, they seem to be more selfish, more into themselves.
Well, this is where Tun Dr. Mahathir did a lot of good things for the country. And it made us less lazy and all that. But he also skyrocketed us too fast, I think. So, you have the protons and all that. But he wanted a very dynamic Malay. So that's why you get all this, for these tycoons like Halim Saad appearing and all. He created all these people, yeah? The thing is, maybe if you're of a certain personality and from a small group, right, you can do it. But the rest of Malaysia has not been able, to be like that. But he wanted all Malays to become entrepreneurs, yeah? And to become a businessman or businesswoman, it's not easy, especially in a country like Malaysia. So did you see the things that you see now, lah? Like that kupute, that whitening cream lady and all that, the epitome of Malay success. But she's made it, I don't know how she's made money, can. Tun Dr. M created this, I don't want to use the word divide, I don't know, a gap or what, where there's a lot of people saying the only way for Malays to do well in life is to go into business. But in Malaysia, you can't get into business unless you have some political affiliations or whether you want to play the game. Are you willing to throw in the girls? Are you willing to pay your way? That's how business is. And this is not pertinent to Malaysia. This is Asia. This is how we've been doing business. It's not great. It is a corrupt way of doing things. But you have to do all this. And we are struggling. I have friends, right? And as a freelancer, I just realized, my God, I'll give you one example from my aspect. I try to do things and someone said, one of the things you can do is to shadow this person. I'm like, I don't have the time to shadow this person for another job.
What does that mean, to shadow?
Basically become the lapdog, fooling this person, fooling that person. I got no time for this. I've got a life here. But I see people doing this, and it's really frightening. I'm talking about Boomi. Yeah? They will follow so-called people who have money, hoping to get the pickings, the crumbs. If they get it, they get lah. They don't.
And they are proud of it.
I don't think they're proud of it, but they are desperate and I think this is how business is done in Malaysia. Got to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is why multi-level marketing is very popular among the Malays because it's short-term gains. There's a lot of businesses in Malaysia that you really scratch your head, wonder like, are these viable or not? But I'll tell you one business that's very self-sustaining that has no government backing, but it's doing quite well. The Al-Ikhwan Group, formerly Al-Arkam. I stayed in Jinrami 2-3 years ago. It was very fascinating, but they run their own little world, and I'm going, wow, this is what you call Malay success, lah. If you want to know, they have their own breeds, they've got their own doctors, they've got their own homeopathy. It works.
So business and Malays are the new identity, it seems like.
I think, and this is probably why a lot of young kids that I see among my cousins, they're very, very observant about being Muslims, and they want to do Muslim entrepreneurship because in Islam also it emphasizes on trade. And with a great example like the Al-Ikhwan Group, they think, yeah, why not? All this have failed.
I see. So what's the way forward if there's something that for us to at least find an identity where we don't have this disparity between the privileged Malay and the ordinary Malays, and to redefine what being Malay is all about, or at least to have that post-Malay identity that we somehow talk about just now?
I think it's going to be a long process, but I think academics, activists, public intellectuals should meet the Malays, all Malaysians. Let's engage realistically. What is happening? How do you want to go forward? How do you want to talk? What are we going to do now? Yeah? And from there, maybe create an appendix to this federal constitution and say, okay, let's do this. Okay, this is how we want to be seen. This is how our position should be protected, or, what. We need to have not just a discourse, though. We need to have a lot of economic activities that will empower and make them feel good. I'm going to throw in one foundation that's doing a lot of work, and I was there yesterday at the launch. The World Islamic Economic Foundation, which is run by Tun Musa Hitam, is doing a lot of fantastic entrepreneurship work. You don't see it because I don't know why our press is not picking up on that. But it's very fascinating because yesterday they worked with Malaysian programs, Malaysian universities. And these kids actually created their own business ideas to help the poor communities. Actually, if you want an interview, then I'll give them you. They'll come over. But it's fantastic. And I said, why aren't you doing more? I said, it's just a pilot. But because the work they're doing in the universities is so good, the ministries are picking up. I think, businesses have to look beyond the CSR thing, typical plant a tree. I mean, it's good to plant trees. But if you want to help the Malays, you've got to come up with very creative economic activities for them, CSR work, which is long-term, which will empower a community. I think, to be honest, just reading this and interviewing people, I think the Malays of Malaysia feel very battered. They're like, "Phew, I'm exhausted." Let's not even talk about KL. Balik Terengganu tu. Orang Terengganu kata gini, tak apa lah. Tu anak raja, gini-gini. Kita ni, hok rakyat ni, we just do what we have to do.
They're just living life one day at a time, I guess.
Maybe it's a better way of surviving instead of predicting the future.
Anyway, thank you very much, Dina Zaman. Thanks for renting your views.
Yeah, thank you.
Durian ASEAN.